I'm going to break something down for you today that I don't normally talk about because most of the time we focus on clarity, confidence, and cash flow. And today I'm going to talk to you about something that most people will call motivation. And years ago, I heard a quote from Zig Ziglar, the late Zig Ziglar, who used to travel, and he wrote a bunch of books, by the way. If you've never read any Zig Ziglar books, I highly recommend it. But Ziggy, wrote a few books and quotes along the way. And he would say things like, motivation is great, but it's like a shower. You need to take it on every day. And you may be doing that now with like TikTok videos or YouTube videos and find yourself or Facebook, whatever it is for you, wherever you get your drug fix, of rabbit hole fix. Because let me tell you, what can really happen and really be a struggle is organizing all the information and the motivation and the different videos and all that stuff, and then putting it into a plan of action, right? It's like, what do you do with all this information? And ironically, I'm really against it. I think it's actually information overload. A lot of people ask me, Nathan, why don't you listen to podcasts on a regular basis? I think there's just too much information. And I think the reality is a lot of creators, and this is fine. I'm not going to say it's not a good method. It's actually one of the growing popular methods. Even I have a podcast. I'm not bashing on podcasts, by the way. However, the way you consume them is really important. I think a search feature is really important. However, if you listen to podcasts that are like very news-based or trading-based, I'll give you two examples. I used to listen to Candace Owens and Patrick Bet-David, and just to name two for now. And when I would listen to them, it was very specific topics. The Patrick Bet-David used to be specifically business-related topics. Candace had her own stuff, very specific. And then what you've probably maybe realized if you've been around them for a while, they start talking about all kinds of things that are current and trending. And I get it though. I get it. It's because they're running a business and they need to get views and they're part of the algorithm. I totally understand that. However, as a consumer, I don't want to be wrapped up in hearing every little thing as well. So I think specific information is really important. I'll give you an example. Patrick Bet-David recently was talking about Snow White. And I mean, I can just imagine getting that story from his producer thinking, how the heck am I going to tie this in to some message to my audience because it's trending, right? And I was just like, personally, I took my kids to Snow White. I like the movie. I think it's great, even if they, change the storyline. However, how do you get someone like Patrick Bet-David to talk about that and make it a message? I'm sure he struggled with that. I can just imagine. Like he has to take that and say, okay, what are my core beliefs? What is everybody else believing about it? And it's not even like really business related. I mean, you could probably make a business message out of it, but you're always looking for what's trending. And anyway, so my point is, when you are a consumer and you are trying to get something done, you're trying to achieve a goal, you need clarity. Right? You need clarity on what you're shooting for. That is number one. So what can happen with a lot of these platforms is they don't give you clarity. They're just going to keep feeding you your interests. Okay. And that feed is actually what can take you down these different rabbit holes. And yeah, it sounds good. And it's like dopamine hits every day. And that's what keeps you glued. But now where's the input? Where is the action taking place? And I think that's where is really what's lacking is the action. So you have to say no. You have to restrict yourself. You have to create restrictions. You have to pull yourself back and say, I am not going to do this. Now, personally, I like to use the two main softwares to make this happen. Number one, right built into the Apple ecosystem is screen time. So I can literally harness how much time I would spend on an application. And then for my desktop, I use an app called Rise, which will not only track my productivity, but also restrict me from, blocking any other websites. And you could do the same thing if you have an Apple computer, you can use screen time as well. However, I use that to discipline myself to stay focused. Am I perfect? Heck no. I've looked at my track record every week. I look at my screen report, my screen time. and I see something. I was like, how did I spend 4 hours this week on TikTok when I'm only there 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day? I have restrictions. How did it get to 4 hours in the whole week? And I've been in that situation before, and I had to cut it off. I have to cut it off quick, because what can happen is, 4 hours this week, 4 hours next week. You know what I'm saying? Like 12 hours in a month, man, there's a lot you could do with 12 hours. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, other than great ideas, what did you get out of it? I'm not talking if you're posting, by the way. I'm talking about searching. I'm not talking about posting and getting your message out there and that kind of airtime. I'm talking about consumption and not distribution. So I think there's a big issue and challenge for a lot of people with this. And when it comes to searching for information, whether it's podcasts or specific videos, you have to go deep. That's the reality. You have to go deep. You have to do a search and go deeper with the information. You have to go deeper with the information. So if your topic is clarity and you want clarity, then you better find like 5 to 10 podcasts, okay, however many you need, on clarity, and just go deep. Clarity. That is study. That is research. That is going deep on a topic and saying, okay, I've studied this topic. How do I apply? What are different methods? What are different ways I can apply this into my life, this topic of clarity, and go so deep and then apply and get results, rather than clarity, Snow White, tariffs, right? And it's just an endless, right? The Kardashians, whatever it is, there's just this endless flow of data and information. And at first it seems good, right? So does sugar. Sugar tastes good in the beginning, but after a while you get so bloated and fat, you got to reduce, you got to cut it out. And that's what a lot of this content is just sugar. So in summary of this video and of this talk today, is basically you have to be super mindful of what is sparking you, your interest, what's sparking you, the inspiration that you're getting. I don't think you should go into your feed for inspiration. Okay. I don't think so. I don't think that's a good source. I want to give you one tip that's really good for inspiration: going deeper in biographies. Find someone, maybe find an organization or a famous person that you admire, a famous person that you like, whoever it is, and go deeper in their story and how they got to where they're at. Let that inspire you. Let that take you to another level and say, wow, I discovered they had this hurdle, this challenge. Life wasn't always perfect. And then then they did this, and they pushed hard and they got to where they're at, right? Let that be a source of inspiration. You'll learn so much more out of biography than you would out of, 5 books on a specific topic. Okay. It's just because humans are great inspirers. The hero in the story can, encourage you to do things that you never thought possible. So keep that in line with inspiration, and let that be a guide rather than a feed just feeding you whatever kind of nonsense they want at any time, being that sugar in your life. All right. So that's it. That's all I got for you today. If this is helpful, let me know and in the comments. But also, if you want clarity on your life and how to get clarity and how to figure that out, how to stop, taking all the dopamine hits, there's a link in the description. You click that link in the description and I will send you like a cheat sheet on how to create instant clarity in your life. You may not like it in the beginning, but let me tell you, once you apply it, it's going to absolutely change your life to a much, much better. All right. I'll see you on the other side.